This is what think tank is. This is what Black feminist lab making is. And we are building new stories of collective well-being, new practices of freedom. We are not only ensuring that the chain of freedom does not break at our lane, as Professor Ross reminds us, we are strengthening it across generations, across geographies, across disciplines, and across difference. And now, it is my deep honor to transition to these brilliant student collaborators of this evening's youth panel, passing the torch, tending the flame. Youth Talk, the present and future of reproductive justice. These scholars, organizers, and visionaries who are already practicing the futures we are imagining, they are not the leaders of tomorrow, they are leading right now. Thank you.
Hey! My name is Amelie Horn, and I have been so honored to work with our youth panelists and to talk about really continuing the work of these labs, right, in this space, acting as a lab almost in itself, to have intergenerational dialogue and to have youth discuss what they see in the world right now and what they see in the future that they are building. And so without further ado, I'd love to invite all of our panelists to come up and find a seat, and we'll get started. Let's be a little louder, y'all. It's their first time on a panel. Yeah! Woo! I'm gonna sit on the bench here. I'm gonna pass these out to y'all. We're sharing a little. Thank you. We're sharing. Okay. How y'all doing? So first, I want to thank you all for being here and for being willing to speak in front of a large group to share your knowledge and your wisdom, right? As young people, it's really important that we have these intergenerational dialogue spaces because we are building futures together. And a lot of you are really going to be living a lot of these technologies that we're talking about. So very excited. I'm going to have us start. Introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns if you want to, what institution or group you're with, and how are you feeling about reproductive justice right now?
Hi, I'm Matteo. I use they, them pronouns. I work for Collective Power, and I'm an undergrad student at Hampshire College. I'm in my third year. I study public health and philosophy with a focus on reproductive health, rights, and justice through a certificate program we have here. And in terms of how I feel about the state of reproductive justice, I think the number one thing I was thinking of when I was looking over that question was something that I think we've talked about a lot in the past couple of days, which is really the sort of need for continuing to imagine and think of new futures in sort of creative ways. I think that there's so much urgency for sort of work that's happening on the ground right now in this moment in all of our communities that it's really hard to find that balance of how much effort gets put into like looking forward to. And I think that there's been some really, really great conversations in the past couple of days about that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Giovanna. I use she, her pronouns. I work with the Feminist Majority Foundation. I do political communication for them and trying to take our campaigns and what's happening in the world and put it into digestible and accessible means, or at least that's the goal. I graduated last year from American University in DC, where I studied political science and sociology. And how I feel about reproductive justice right now. Right now, the Feminist Majority Foundation, we're putting on our annual conference, which Amelie will be at, so you all should come. It's the last weekend in March. And so we're really centering resistance and joy, which is not denying the state of where things are, but it's very intentional and building on what the work that's been done and moving into the midterms and working through that. And so I'm in paralleling to the space that I feel like we're in here today, and through these past 2 days, I'm feeling a lot of resistance and joy. But I would be I would be denying if I didn't say I was also fearful. I live less than a mile away from the Capitol building where all these decisions are being made, and I wake up every morning and I check my phone, and I never know what's gonna happen, what world we're living in, and it is scary, but it also fuels me, and I feel a responsibility to make change and to be in spaces of building that future that we want. And so I'm happy to be here today with all of you and like envisioning what that future looks like to resist.
Hello everyone, my name is Keza Ineza. I use she, they pronouns, and I am a current sophomore at Wellesley College. I'm studying, go blue. I'm currently studying economics and Africana studies.
Africana?
And I am part of a children's library research project with my friends Nia and Jude. Shout out to them. We're looking into what representation looks like and what kind of messaging we're telling children at a very young age about what the world's supposed to look like. And as for the future of reproductive technologies and the current future, I would like to build off of what Matteo said about the need for imagination, but also the need for audacity. I fear, I have noticed that the alt-right is getting even bolder and even more confident in their takeover and even louder about the white supremacist ideals and beliefs. And I believe that we have more power than we do, but we're too shy to really tap into it. I think a lot of us come from marginalized communities where we're told to be small. I, especially as a Black woman, have been working really hard to unlearn this need to be small. So I think we just need to be louder and bolder and stop negotiating and start demanding what we want.
Hi everyone, my name is Esther Jagwer, and I'm a student here at Amherst College, and I'm part of the BREHA collective. Shout out to Professor Jolly. So I'm a senior also here, and I'm majoring in neuroscience. So yeah, on the pre-med track. But here at BREHA, I focus on mainly the reproductive justice side of pregnancy criminalization. And the way I think about, feel about reproductive justice right now, I think coming from a translational lens, given that I've also grown up in Southern Africa, I just think of the ways on how, the fight for, the progress in reproductive justice is looking very different also translationally, but I'm hoping for, more coalitions in building and forming across nationally.
Hello, everybody.
Ooh.
I don't think it's on.
Okay. There you go.
All right, it's on now. Hello, hi. My name is Shioneka Farr. I'm a graduating senior from Kentucky State University. I'm majoring in criminal justice. I'm here with my sister keeper and Black Women's Health Imperative. I am super happy to be here. How do I feel about our state of reproductive justice? Whew.
It's hard.
I mean, for one, I have heard so much great information about the future of reproductive justice. It's amazing. For one, artificial wounds is crazy. I just had to, that is something that has stuck with me this entire time. But how I see our current state of reproductive justice, I kind of look at it in the standpoint of policies. I had the lovely opportunity at interning at our Kentucky state capitol under Representative Erica Hancock, and she brought me to every conference, every meeting, discussing House bills. Any door she could open up for me, she did. And I actually got to see them discuss ways to counteract these bills that they were bringing up at the U.S. Capitol to try to combat these reproductive staminas that they were putting on, because in rural communities and more conservative areas, they were trying to stop birth control access, stop us from even being able to access condoms. And in a hypersexual community like the rural area, we need contraceptives. So being able to be in that space and see them actually trying to take counteraction, I love to see the small percentage of Democrats who are there fighting for us. So it kind of gives me motivation to keep going and be there one day so I can be in their shoes and fighting for what we need.
Hi, everybody. I think I might be the oldest person on this panel. My name is Ash. I'm also a member of the BREHA collective. I've kind of been here from the inception, so I've been like admin fairy, I've been like archivist, I've been graphic designer, just kind of had my hands in a bunch of our projects. But I think I consider myself to be a memory worker. I'm currently in grad school for library and information science, particularly going on the archival studies track. And I am really just invested in not just like preserving the stories and organizing that like is happening around us, that's like also currently happening and moving in this room, but making sure that it continues to live its life and be used and be engaged by all of us for the sake of our movements. So I think that's what I consider, how I would define myself, how I consider my purpose. How I feel about the state of RJ, it's complicated. I also feel like being here, I've like learned so much, so much about like the different fields, different threads that we're all kind of like tugging on. So I almost feel like I'm realizing that I don't know as much as I thought I did, which is a great place to be in. But I think I am always eager to like engage more with like queer and trans communities. It feels really important to me, and also like I think concurrently like sex workers. Because sex work is labor. Sex workers have a lot to say about digital surveillance, like we'll be talking about. Also like financial markets and child rearing and persecution and criminalization. So I think like I am both like really moved by all of the discussions that we've like been able to have, but like I'm also really eager for the conversation to expand and also include particularly marginalized and stigmatized forms of labor, and theorizing that's like also currently happening and also critical for our future.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. I am, so grateful to be in community with you, and with your hope and with your questions. Beautiful. So kind of to contextualize, before we really get into digital surveillance, I want to hear a little bit about how you would describe your digital self, right? So that's like, how are you choosing to represent or not represent yourself online? Because that's a choice too, you know? Who here is on Instagram? Anyone? Yeah? We got a lot of people on Instagram in here? That's a choice, right? I'm on Instagram too, so I can't say nothing. Right? Okay. I can't say nothing because I'm on Instagram too. No, not throwing stones from glass houses here. But, right, like, that's a choice. How we're choosing to represent ourselves in these, in these spaces, and which spaces we are choosing to be in. So I want to hear from y'all, where do you represent yourself? And how do you change how you represent yourself, really, for the digital space? And y'all can popcorn. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go how I describe myself in the digital era. I feel like it's very interesting to talk about our generation and talk about the digital media because we were discussing this at the table and I had told them that my mom put a desktop computer in my room in the 4th grade. I was like 10. So I have had the access to the World Wide Web since I was 10 years old. I feel like our generation is so unique because of the experience. Not only Gen X, but every other generation following after that is going to have this from birth all the way into death, technology and social media experience. And it's inevitable to ignore. You can't just, as much as you would like to not be on social media, it's intertwined through everything. I know my own university, we use Canva. We don't do any type of paper test, anything at all. You have to have a laptop. You have to have a MacBook, something that is technology based. So I feel like all my life I have been intertwined with technology. So my entire life is broadcast on social media. Even my mom, it was no consent for those pictures that was taken of me on Facebook. My entire timeline of my life has been broadcast on social media. And so it's just really interesting, even if I had no choice of it or not, like it's there to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important part that I didn't really think about, but just like the role of parents taking photos of their kids and then putting it on the internet. Because also like a lot of our parents don't really have like solid digital security practices or knowledge about surveillance in the same way. Shots fired. I mean, it's true.
No. They will text you. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, I have been in too many situations where my dad has like called me and been like, I sent $600 to the wrong person on Cash App. How do I reverse it? And I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry. Like, but yeah, I think like I am 29 years old. So I've like also had the desktop, like big box computer in my like living room that I used when I was like way, way young. But I think like more recently, my digital self is like very partial and very limited. I have an Instagram account for the sake of like posting like occasional stories about a library project that I'm working on, and then to also just kind of see what my friends are up to. And then also to like access people's funders, because I feel like mostly social media is really good for like, has someone gone into a car crash? Do they need money? Can you circulate their funder? Do they need stuff for medical care? Can you donate? So I like social media for that aspect because it really puts people's needs in front of your face and gives you accessible ways to like either donate or like circulate or broadcast the things that they need. And then like occasionally I'll like post a little art once in a while, but I think for the most part, I'm like, definitely more on the cautious side of like, what is going on here? You don't need to know who I am. You will never know who I am. But at the same time, like as we've talked about, there are so many ways we are being surveyed on the internet that we have like no control over. And like, you know, opting in and displaying ourselves and deciding how we represent ourselves is only like one piece of like the information about us that's like gathered. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel sort of similar about the being skeptical of it in this moment feeling. I think my digital self is like as non-existent as it can possibly be. I think if you Google my name, you can only really see some embarrassing track meet results. But with my work at Collective Power right now, I'm one of the student group coordinators, and a lot of what we do is event planning. And as we've been trying to connect with other organizers in the area, like it's been a really big learning experience for me in terms of where an online presence is really helpful and necessary, especially working with other young people. We can flyer all we want, and if events aren't being reposted by people and organizations that are trusted in the area, like nobody is going to show up. And so, yeah, trying to like navigate how to connect with other organizers has really been all of what my social media usage in my life has been, really.
As for me, my digital presence, like you touched upon, has not always been in my hands. I went to a PWI, and if you know anything about that, you know they will get that diversity shoot. They will get that diversity shoot. And so I'll see pictures of myself like online and in places that I never thought I'd see. And I think it makes sense to me because our society has always cared so much about beauty and aesthetics, and the presence of digital media and like social media has only heightened that, and has only heightened the presentation of people's bodies, particularly women's bodies and Black women's bodies, particularly how it's even like children are being used, and like videos of them are being saved by very creepy people. And then also, it just feels like it's another form of patriarchy just being reperpetuated on a heightened scale. And it's almost like, I don't know, selling parts of yourself. And so I'm still working through my feelings about my presence on digital media, as I recognize, like you said, that it's very important for raising awareness and spreading information. Like I think of all the powerful Palestinian journalists who were documenting like on-life events, and how we wouldn't know what was happening in Palestine if it hadn't been for their bravery, and how they've been targeted. So yes, digital media and digital presence is a very tricky topic, I think, and there's so many complexities to it.
Yes, Keza. Oh, sorry.
Well, I think for me, same as everyone else, growing up, I felt like my digital identity was like kind of non-existent. But now, like, I'm one of those people who are obsessed with Instagram. Like, I constantly delete and re-upload it, but only because of, I feel like, the agency that it gives me in keeping, being a part of the work that's being done in reproductive health and public health. This is the only time I feel like the algorithm has benefited me, especially as someone who is very interested and passionate about the work that it's being done in Southern Africa concerning reproductive health, you know, and reproductive health and public health, just being able to see the movements that have been made, you know, made in like the intersections of HIV and AIDS and reproductive health, and that how that intersects. So I feel like for me, it's been like a way to be a part of the movement and the work that's being done over there, and just being able to witness the changes that are being made. So for me, I feel like it's more of like an agency and being able to be a part of the work. Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear what everyone else has to say, and it's making me rethink my digital self. I work in communications, so I'm chronically online. If you Google me, you will find pictures. And so I kind of see my digital self in two ways: how I represent myself, and then how I represent my organization, since I run a lot of their Instagram accounts. And I also understand like my positionality and where I come, how I represent, how I come to a situation. And I was born in this country, and I am white, and so I have an ability to go into a space, and I feel comfortable representing that and using that privilege to be in spaces to highlight what is happening in Congress. One of the last hearings I was at, they were talking about if women can have access to telehealth. And it's like, that is wild. And I think it's really important to be in that space and to showcase what these elected officials are talking about. I'm also thinking about those 4th grade pictures when I had my iPad and I posted pictures of myself, like building a snowman that maybe I shouldn't have. But I what you were saying with having, when you post something online, it has power and it can reach so many audiences. And there was on the first day that the Supreme Court was hearing oral arguments for 2 trans cases, there was a huge rally outside, and it was very heated, and there were, we got a lot of hate on the posts that I made from that, and I was able to show my face and being able to have people, there were a few like local news sources that wanted interviews, and but it's also important, like things that I don't share, and not necessarily my digital self, but like representing my organization, like blurring other people is really important. Like I'm comfortable showing my face in pictures, but not everyone is comfortable with that. There are facial recognition technologies that find you and they know who everyone is, and it's important that everyone feels safe being at protests or being in spaces like this one too, and like keeping people's identities very safe. And also, I personally find it important to post things even if they get negative comments and people are very transphobic and other things, but to still show that like you're in that space and you are representing those people and you're standing up for them, even if it gets hate and some people might think certain things are performative, like to still reach someone and to show that you're standing in solidarity with them, I do still think is very important. But there's also a lot of fear with these platforms, so I'm feeling very conflicted too and hearing what everyone else has to say about it as well.
Yeah, so a lot of variety in the group, really, about like how y'all are using digital spaces. And one thing that you have all brought up in one way or another, for the most part, is surveillance, right? And so I want to think a little bit about surveillance and algorithms, like knowing that everything you do is under a microscope and the government can't find it. That's weird. And knowing that these tech companies, right, are deciding who's going to be targeted. Earlier in the conference, I talked about talking with students around egg donation and the way that that's targeted. My algorithm has recently decided that I am pregnant, and I don't know what to do about it. Every other ad is for abortion. I've gotten ads for, and not like good ads for abortion, like anti-abortion ads, disguised as resources. I started getting ads for a crisis pregnancy center in South Dakota. So, I'm sure they're expecting me to show up there any day now. So, right. It's wild, y'all. So thinking about, like, surveillance and about algorithms and about how much of your experience is being mediated, right, through these technological lenses that I don't know how it works. None of us know how it works. People who made that don't know how it works. What are you seeing and experiencing about reproductive technologies online? Do you feel pushed to access certain things or not access certain things? And do you think these ads and like the information that you're getting, do you think there's enough information about risks and benefits to these technologies just based off of what you're kind of seeing in the social media zeitgeist? And again, popcorn.
I can start because I feel like I have the least to say about this. I actually went back and checked my Instagram, and I don't get like targeted ads at all, really. Specifically, especially not for anything regarding like reproduction or like reproductive health. But like I literally went back and checked because Amelie, when we were talking, and you were like, "Yeah, they really want my eggs," and I was like, I have never gotten anything like requesting my eggs, requesting preservation, which I'm like, I feel like it's a little foolish to be like, oh, my digital security practices are so on point that they just don't know anything about me and they can't tailor like advertising to me, even though, I do take certain precautions. But I'm like, I feel like it is likely because they know that I'm Black and trans and they're like, we do not want you to reproduce actually, so you're not going to get any information whatsoever. And you can kind of continue to live in obscurity. But then on the flip side, I also don't get a lot on my personal accounts, at least, like social media, Instagram, about like any kind of reproductive technology or discussions. A lot of the conversations that I have about it and a lot of the misinformation that I feel like I combat about like, birth control giving you cancer and things happens like mainly offline and in passing and just conversation with people that I know. So I'd be really curious to hear what other people say and what other people's algorithms are giving them, because I feel like that also is very, very personal. And we don't often get to see it if we're not actively scrolling on each other's accounts. So.
So I guess I'll take this from a business standpoint. I'm in a business class right now. I have a really good business professor. I like to merge everything with the courses that I'm learning. And I like corporate law. That's what I want to get into. We actually talked about algorithms and how social media shows you these specialized ads. It's nothing but just picking up off the things that you talk about and the environment that you're around. That's why you've seen about the reproductive centers and stuff, is because we're at a reproductive justice event and we have been discussing nothing but reproductive justice. We have to understand that even though we love healthcare, we care about our health and the health of other people, our government doesn't. Our government is about monetary gain. What will benefit them? What is going to get them the most profit? Y'all think there's not a cure for cancer? It's very much a conspiracy, but you have to think in these types of spaces that if they wanted to cure everybody and help all of the people with disabilities and different health struggles, they would. There's no profit in that, though. So they're going to give you a slither and keep you coming back. And so within social media, and especially within reproductive justice, with our different contraceptives, the social media ads that you see are not going to be 100% effective. You're going to see things that help slightly. You take this, you may not get pregnant, but it's a chance that you very may likely will. And you also have to think about these different marginalized communities, because I actually did want to tell you, I seen some egg donation ads. It was about a year ago.
Awesome, but like, no, legitimately.
But what I really take is the money comparison. You were talking about where they offer anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 for an egg, and
Average is 11,000. For white people's, like I think it's 10,000 or 9,000, one of the two, for a black woman's egg, and then for the max within the study that I was reading, it was between 75 and 100,000 for white or Asian.
oh, it's way more than what I thought.
$12,000 was the max for a black woman's egg.
And that's how much I was being advertised. I was being advertised from 10,000 to 13,000.
No, it is not per egg; it's per cycle.
Okay, let's be clear.
Yes.
I saw mouths dropping.
Yep, we are. No, per cycle, per cycle.
$70,000 an egg. Come on now.
And they'll advertise that, but you are very likely not going to get 75,000.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just find it very interesting how the algorithm plays off of that, because they know it's an interaction thing. You're seeing this over and over again. You're going to interact with it. Maybe you might like it on accident. That's still monetary gain for them. So I just kind of think about it as a money play more than anything. I don't want to get into my conspiracies, but I don't think the government wants to help too much. I don't think they want to help us too much. I think that kind of takes us as citizens to be able to differentiate. Is this something that is market? Are they trying to sell me like cattle, or are they actually trying to help me? So that's what I look at when I look at the monetary and algorithm.
Absolutely.
I kind of wanted to pivot just a little bit. There is a lot of misinformation regarding reproductive health online, and a lot of myths, especially about what our bodies look like, what our bodies will do. and all the different like misinformations that are seemingly accurate but are incorrect. However, I do want to highlight that that is a privilege in the sense that we are geographically privileged. We are worried about the uses of technology that is surveilling us, and that is a very legitimate concern. But we also have to recognize that we have access to a lot of like reproductive health products that the global majority don't. Yes, we do have to protest about the lead being in our tampons and our pads, but we also have to recognize that a lot of the world doesn't have access to pads, doesn't have access to period products that there should be. So I think in terms of us like thinking about what needs to happen with reproductive justice, we need to think, I guess, more internationally, like you said, about giving access to the very bare minimum of what every person with a uterus needs.
I want to even agree with you. I didn't even think of it from that lens. But in terms of that, it is a privilege for most people. But in terms of reproductive technologies, from what I see, it's not really, like Ash said, not really part of my algorithm. Anything that I see, basically just online or digitally, I take with a grain of salt. Because it's usually just probably the half truth or not the truth at all. So it's just being honored to even being spaced in rooms like this where you get to hear the full truth and be informed in the fullness, the holistic fullness of what these reproductive technologies consist of. So yeah.
I love what you brought up about it being a privilege and thinking about it internationally and also within our own country here. There's an immense like period poverty problem in middle schools and high schools that some that are very privileged have access to menstrual products, but there's a lot that don't have that, and the ones that do have had to fight a lot to get that, and there's a large issue with trans folks, or if they're included, sometimes they'll only be in the girls' bathroom, and then that leaves out a group of people. And so it is a privilege that we get to even be in this space to talk about it. In terms of reproductive technology, I recently graduated, so I'm starting to think about like how I further my education and be a lifelong learner. And so I've been looking into like grad programs, and once I did that, I started getting an ad for freezing my eggs. Mm-hmm. Only when I started looking in a grad program. They didn't care when I was an undergrad. Undergrad, I got all the egg donor things, especially once I graduated, they were like, yes, donate your eggs now that you have a college degree. But once I started thinking about, maybe I want to further my education, do I want to go more into sociology or more in public policy or whatever it is, I started getting ads like, you should freeze your eggs. Like if you're thinking about going into more education, you're not going to have babies anytime soon. You should freeze these young eggs, that way you can use them. And it's very uncomfortable to know that my phone is looking, even though I looked it up on my computer, and my phone is then thinking, oh, we should capitalize on this and try to make money off of this, and really thinking about it. And it's you have to remember, like, Google is a company, and if it's not, you're not paying for it, you are the product, and they're using us. And it's sometimes you have to like really think about the ad. Like sometimes it's I want to just like forget about them, but then I'm like, now that we're thinking about all this, I'm like, that's very strange and very uncomfortable that they're trying to get me to think about that when I was just looking into what I want to do next. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of jumping off that with the egg freezing conversation. I mean, it's so obviously expensive and labor intensive. And there's sort of this idea that there's a lot of time pressure behind it too, right? And I'm thinking about it in maybe the context. I'm trans, and a lot of the people in my social circles are too. Like starting hormone replacement therapy, there's some really urgent questions about fertility and fertility like preservation, right? And I see a lot of people around me really faced with that kind of decision really, really quickly. And the way that it's sort of presented to you is so time sensitive, and I just had a friend of mine go through the process of freezing her sperm before she started estrogen, and it was just incredible, the contracts they were having her sign and the clauses that were in it that just made absolutely no sense. And every day that you're not doing that is another day that you're putting off gender affirming care. And one clause in particular that stuck out to us was she had to sign that she was only going to use her sperm in the future with a committed romantic partner. And so then we were wondering, like what that means and how that really like shapes her future and how quickly she has to be making this decision, and the kind of information that is out there, because it's really not a process that is like lined up for people her age and in her position to be going through. It was really unapproachable, and I'm thinking about that when you were talking about information. Yeah.
Thank you for letting us know that, because that's so incredibly violent.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also just like on that point, it's like, how would they even determine then what qualifies as a romantic relationship? Like what kind of surveillance would like she then have to open herself up to? What proof that would they ask for? That's very weird.
Yeah. No. Totally. Like I like the line, you are the product. Right? You are the product. And I think that is interesting, right? How surveillance and algorithms, right, are a business model. They're targeting us for financial reasons, which is part of why, they're incentivized to do these, these specific technologies that they can make money off of. They are incentivized to make sure that everyone in the world has period products. Right? And so when you kind of consider like that you are the product for this massive company, and that for these companies, other people are not a priority, how do you think about digital surveillance and resistance? Do you have thoughts on resistance in general? Do you think it's possible? Right? And how do you see digital surveillance and algorithms as something to resist, both within the RJ movement and potentially things to like weaponize as well, right? Like if we could figure out how, like if we could use algorithms to push reproductive justice ideas, should we? Is that possible? Thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to yap about this for a bit. And I also think it goes back to it's like what people are using social media for, and like why I think it's also a valuable like information sharing space. Because a lot of people, it's like, thinking about how untrustworthy CNN, MSNBC, big like media houses are, and how people like are increasingly just like not really going to them for their information, for their news. I feel like social media is kind of the place, with the exception of like people's intimate circles and people who they know, where people are actually like finding information, finding out what's happening in Sudan, finding out what's happening in Palestine. And I appreciate the people who are on Instagram, who stream on YouTube, who are using these spaces to continue these narratives, because I feel like, especially in this like hyper surveilled like internet space where it feels like everything is permitted, it feels really important to have some type of like counterweight to the fascists running rampant. Especially because the algorithm, like you said, Amelie, is like, it's gearing you towards like pregnancy crisis centers and anti-abortion advertising. So it's like, what does it mean for people who feel, I feel like it's less about like, even if you feel comfortable being on the space, but it's like, what does it mean to actually use that space as a propaganda tool in the positive way for us and for our movements, and to circulate information and the things we need to know. Because like we have to admit that like a lot of young people do use social media, and that's part of the reason why they took over TikTok and shut it down, because like people were making a lot of videos and sharing a lot of leftist content, and that really did something like politically. So I think like while like social media does make me itchy in a lot of ways, like it is something that I feel like we can find ways to tap into, and I think like I want to like loop back around to sex workers specifically, because like navigating like advertising services on like a website that is like predominantly geared to censoring you, shutting you down, and finding ways to get around that is like a really important skill, actually. Knowing what platforms are like more like lenient to not just like adult content, but then also like political content, because usually they go hand in hand, is really critical. What platforms won't just like kick you off because you post about abortion, you know? I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to like join hands with sex workers and be like, what's going on in both of our spaces? And like, what information can we share? Because I don't think like the internet is a dead end, and I don't think I want to give up on it just yet.
Yeah. And I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to do, in 1 second, we're going to do one last round of applause for our amazing panelists for coming out, right? Being brave. Woo!